All right, and welcome back to another Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, I took about a week or so off from this because I've been working on all kinds of other things. But we are getting back to going through the updates for Conquest: The Last Argument Kings from Parabellum Games that they put out at this point just about a week and a half or so ago at time of recording. By the time you see it, it might be a little bit closer to 2 weeks, but around that sort of time frame. For this, the idea is to go through and see what changes they made from the previous iteration to the current one, talk about what I see for those armies, sort of big things to keep in mind for that, and what I might think that you kind of see from here. Keep in mind that if you are interested in picking up anything for Conquest, below in the show notes, we do have a code so you can save yourself 10%. It's Terrain Kickers. We also have a link that you can click on to go into it. You save 10%, helps the show out as well, so it does a little bit for both of us. So, let's take a look at what they did in this one. We're going to take a look at the Wadhrun. So, for a little bit about the Wadhrun, for things that I've seen from them, we're going to talk about some of the just pieces I don't tend to see or haven't really seen. Like, we're going to talk about veterans. We didn't really, honestly, personally, where I was, I didn't really see those. I saw a lot of Raptor Riders. I saw a lot of dinosaur type lists. I saw a lot of slingers. I saw those sort of things. But we'll talk about the pieces that I didn't see, and from there, what I think you will know. If you're watching, you'll notice left side of the screen is the current rules, right side of the screen has the old rules. That way we can talk about the differences. Now, I did peruse this ahead of time, looking for any stealth changes that they didn't mark, because every now and then there is some. I didn't notice any here, but let's see if we catch any. All right, so first change, they didn't change the base rule, the way it works, which is great. I do think the rule works quite well. It's rather understandable, and any better way you would try to explain it, I think would just add so many more sentences, it would complicate it again. So overall, I like the way they do that. Biggest change that we start with is supremacy abilities. So previously, Chieftain / Thunder Chieftain, essentially when you charge, got shock. And that was always active, and yeah, they gain shock. Remember, shock is related to when you charge, you get your +1 and all of that. What happened now is they wanted to differentiate the two chieftains quite a bit. So they gave shock assault to the chieftain and thunderous assault to the thunder chieftain. Essentially, the chieftain, so the character on foot, helps infantry and monsters. The character that's riding a dinosaur helps cavalry and brutes, so essentially helps your dinosaurs and other brutes, so your warbreds and stuff like that. Both of them are always active, but it now differentiates. So depending on what type of list you want to run, you want to take the right thing. If you're taking dinosaurs, it makes sense you probably took a Thunder Chieftain, but before, to get Shock Assault, you didn't need to. You could actually cheapen out. Maybe you were taking a bunch of dinosaurs, but you didn't have a unit you want to put them in, whatever it may be. Now you're forced. Or another way to think about it is if you wanted a Foot Chieftain because of what he did, you could make him your warlord. And now, if you want the ability on certain units, more so than others, now you have to differentiate. So I really do like that. It really does help play up that these are two different characters. And it makes sense, though. One on a dinosaur should be helping dinosaurs. All right, from there, we are going to take a look. Actually, let me shift this slightly. We are going to take a look at the characters. Keep in mind some of the changes they've done for characters in this edition is that they removed from all characters the ability to take retinues. So often characters change some points and they got some bonuses related to the things they used to be able to do. Matriarch Queen didn't change her points, she didn't change her stat line at all, but she did gain the ability of Teachings of Conquest. So she can take up to 2 of the following Teachings of Conquest. They are the ones listed there. So she may take Stoic if she wants. This is a thing she never had before. It gives Indomitable. Keep in mind, Indomitable does such things as auto-pass morale. It makes you immune to things that essentially cause fear, as well as you get your combat reforms and all. You don't have to test. They're automatic. I believe that's the other thing that it does. So 10 points you can be Indomitable. 20 points you can be Voice of Conquest. The character in any regiment count as Cult of Conquest. Keep in mind, when you are doing your chants, that Conquest is essentially the wild card. So if you weren't taking much Conquest before, because of your options that you had, this is a good way to get Conquest into this. There's nothing here that forces it to not... Remember, Matriarch can go on an Apex Predator. There's nothing here that denies that ability. So if you do want, you could take her on that. She's now Voice of Conquest. So is it, although it was as well before because of Bellowing Roar, I think it is, whichever rule it was. They were Conquest as well, but it does give you an option. Or if you want a different unit to be Conquest, if you want it to be whatever unit you want to put her in, like I said, say, Blooded or maybe Braves or Hunters. Now you have 2 Conquest chant markers that you can put down every single turn. So something important to think about there. But otherwise, no real change. Kept it kind of nice and simple for this lady. Able to take most things, as we see. All right, the Chieftain. Chieftain did get an extra attack. He used to be 5, now he's on 6 because essentially he could no longer take a retinue that would give him +1 attack, so you're removed from that. He gets the same exact teachings at Conquest. That makes sense. When you're looking at this, when you think about what it would do, it's weird that your characters couldn't kind of play into what they are. This lets you play into that a bit more. I especially like Stoic on some of these models because, okay, he's Resolve 3, big enough unit 4, auto passing 1. You are not having to test because the last thing you want to do is test in combat and not be able to shift to get more maximized attacks. Really like that in general. The other thing is Tribe's Pride. Veteran regiments in this warband and any currently attached character stands gain flurry. Personally, I didn't really see veterans. I don't have a good reason why I didn't see them, or at least I don't remember seeing them much, or if they were on the field, they didn't do as much, so they didn't stand out to me for the times that I faced against Wadhrun. Giving them flurry is huge, so that is actually really, really good. Yeah, and notice it's veteran regiments in the warband. It doesn't have to be and any currently attached character stands. So when you do this, you can take multiple veterans if you really want to. Notice that veterans are the mainstay. Gives you a good option, especially because he's one of the ones that can actually take your Tantor. So if you're looking to take a Tantor or anything like that, you could actually take 2 sets of veterans, your Tantor, and it lets you take something else like a Warbred or Raptor Riders. Actually, I think Raptor Riders are really, really good because being a light, very quick moving unit is very worthwhile in the game. Thunder Chieftain didn't change. Predator did change. Predator actually did have a points change. Predator went up by 10 points. Most things that went up, they went up about 10 points, but gained an attack, which is for all intents and purposes, essentially what you would have paid anyway. Forward force we talked about previously. Forward force gives you flank. This again was an upgrade you often would take on that kind of model anyway. Hey, it gets the same exact teachings of Conquest. So they're really leaning into the fact that you can let yourself kind of be what you want it to be. You are having to pay the extra to be the Conquest, but if that is what you want, if you want those sort of wild cards, you can absolutely do it. Otherwise, no real change. Otherwise, he's exactly as you've always seen. Mounted Predator didn't change at all, but Scion of Conquest did. So when we take a look at the Scion of Conquest, again, 10 points extra. Extra Pieced, which is the 10 or 15 point upgrade that you would have taken anyway, gets that teaching of Conquest, so you're now able to give extra rules to your units. When you think about these characters, previously, you would have been buying some retinue. I don't know exactly how much you would have bought of each, and it doesn't matter exactly what, but you obviously would have taken a couple of bits of combat retinues. For this one, you might take some of the arcane retinues, all of that. But what you do now is those points you would have spent, you could at least buy Stoic if you wanted, or you could buy that Voice of Conquest if that's what you want as well. So for about the same cost as or maybe a little bit cheaper than what you used to use for your characters, now you can get those characters with some extra bonuses. A different type of bonus, but hey, everyone lost a little bit of extra from their characters. I know they want to try to differentiate the characters a little bit more. They are a little bit samey in certain ways, but we'll see what they come up with. Also, notice difference of spells. So you now have these 2 extra spells. We will talk about what sorts of spells that you get shortly. We'll get to all of those. Dissonance. Disordance and Resonance. Yeah, so those are the difference of spells. For item-wise, the only real change, the red here just references the fact that infantry is the one who take banners. They cleared that up for everyone. And you can't go with monsters if you take a banner. The Beads of Death just clarify the fact that it's not the character stand, the regiment that the character's with gets tenacious. Before it was just the character stand. which was much, much worse. It only happened in challenges then. Now it happens whenever you want. They also talk about that for Death's Reach, that in addition, if the character has the rider special rule, so they clarified there, because remember, they essentially for this, they added in this idea of rider. Before, if you were Apex rider, you had this. Now it's just if you're a rider. So they added, sorry, there it is. They added that in because they've essentially put a new keyword of rider rather than having every type of riding thing. That is the main changes there. They mentioned that the Mantle of the Devoted is the infantry regiment. Before, I don't believe it says, yeah, it says this regiment that the character is attached to. They specify infantry regiment. Makes sense. Your guys were attached to infantry pretty much. The only time that wasn't necessarily true is if you were a rider, then technically before it would apply to the dinosaur that you're on. Now it doesn't. So I like that. That's nice and clean. For masteries, they just clarify that, hey, you get the rider special rule. So they can shorten a lot of what they say because they're just giving you rider. They do clarify for this. Let me just get to where it is for that mastery. Oops, sorry. For that Tantor rider, what they clarify is a chieftain attached to Tantor has its Way of War's ability no longer affect that particular regiment. It's now within 8. If you go back through all of that, if memory serves, what it had before was effectively the same sort of thing, but now that used to be in that rider special rule then. Now it's written out here. I believe that's true. If not, you do get exactly what it says. So rather than the chieftain, so it no longer affects your Way of War, no longer affects the regiment that character stands currently attached to. Rather, you pick a non-monster within 8 inches, and that's who it affects. It takes place at the end of the resolve command step, and all of that. So they, again, I don't believe that's an actual change, if memory serves. I have to take a look real fast. Yeah, you don't want that to happen anyway. The Ways of War for him are rapid displacement, get double time, very bad, or violence of action, gain flurry. You don't want the giant monsters to have those sort of things, so it just removes it from them. I don't believe he could do it before either. I'm pretty sure of that. At least I really, really hope not. Let's talk about those brand new spells. There was a change. Crescendo's change is... Okay. If you play Wadrun, you're not going to like what Crescendo's change. I think it's better for the health of the game. Also consider that now in the game, when your character stand goes, if you want, you can draw the card directly underneath them at the end of their activation. And if it happens to be for the regiment that they are currently in, and that regiment has not gone yet, that regiment may go. So you kind of get Crescendo's ability. What Crescendo does is you got a Conquest chant marker. That's always been the same. Now you get to secretly look at the top 3 command cards of your command stack and put them back in any order. So you can start stacking the deck. What it used to do is when you make this, you draw the next card, and if it's a regiment, that regiment goes. Overall, not great for the health of the game at the time, because that was something that was very unique. You didn't get other spots to do it so much. I know city-states sort of have their other special deck and all, but it wasn't something I really see shown. Now, since your characters essentially have this, the next thing can go if they want it to, if you stack it correctly. That Crescendo now does you something else, but what it does you is really, really good. So one, if when your Zion of Conquest goes, if you want the regiment he's in to go next, stack it within the top 3. You don't have to have it right afterwards. Because if you get your Crescendo off, boom, you can do this. No guarantee, obviously, get it off. I've absolutely seen, even on 2-4 with his dice, I've seen people fail. Or if the game has changed in such a way that you no longer want you no longer want that regiment to be activated, but you want someone else to go soon. Remember, when you choose at the end of the character's activation, if you choose to look, you don't have to look. You can just choose not to, and then you get some options of what happens. So if you have, say, 2 units of Braves, it doesn't have to be his unit. It could be the other one. But if you choose to flip it at the end of his activation, it has to be his unit. So this does mean, though, that if you don't want his stand or whatever that stand was, Braves, Veterans, whatever you put next to go, you can reshuffle those three. So you can make sure you're stacking depending on what you need currently. 2 new spells, though. Discordance, it's 12-inch, 3 scaling. Target enemy regiment cannot seize objective zones until the end of the round. All right. You're an army, at least from what I've seen, you tend to run pretty big units, unless you're talking about dinosaurs or something like that. Or if someone's pumping, a unit into one of your dinosaur units, or like say an Apex Predator or something like that, they charge it at the end, you've already moved up. This is a good way to be able to take that objective zone. So anything that plays for objectives is great because this game really pushes the objectives. The other one is Resonance. Again, 12 inches. This one's on a 4. Target objective zone. Enemy regiments in range of the zone gain decay 2. You're already an army that impacts well. You're an army that has trample on things. And now I can start decaying them. So once they activate, at the end of their activation, they'll roll 2 dice per every one of their stands that has this rule, which would be all the stands within range. On 5s and 6s, they take a wound. So you can really start chopping down your opponents. You have to get pretty close with a 12, but as you walk your way up, hey, you got crescendo you can do to stack the deck appropriately. Braves, I think, went up by 5 points. Yeah, Braves went up by 5 points. Who cares? It's 5 points. That's nothing. I don't really rate 5-point differences. Veterans did actually go down. They went down by 10 points extra per additional stands, and their stand-up bearer is free. Maybe the reason I didn't see them so much, it's not that they're bad. It's just that the things they had, they were very expensive, and the standard, which is something you're going to want, was very expensive. Now you get a free 20-point standard. You're saving 10 points a stand. I could absolutely see seeing taking a 4 block or maybe 5 block with a character in it. Your hunters went down by 5 points, and more importantly, they gain loose formation. So when people are shooting at you, they'll have some minuses essentially. Not going to go through that too much. Your Warbread went down, I believe, if memory serves. I have to check. Warbread went down, I think, by 20. Yeah, 20 points. So 20 less points for Warbread. I think the Warbread are very good. Again, I didn't see them tons, or I saw them, but they didn't do quite as much. And I think the reason they probably didn't quite do as much, maybe they were just a little too expensive, although they did lose Burnout. Burnout was good for them. They now have no draw event, but they did get an extra wound. That's a very fair trade-off. You're more survivable on your extra wound, less burnout, so you're not necessarily hitting quite as much, but what you do hit, you hit really well. You still have cleave 2. You have 2 impacts. You have relentless blows. So if you're inspired, you might only be hitting on 3s, essentially hitting 50% of the time, but all your 1s or 2s, really, really worth it. I think that's actually really good. Talk to my cell phone. But for 20 less points, I think that's fair. Hunting packs went down by 5 points. If you like hunting packs, take them. I think hunting packs are pretty fun. They go down really quick because they're resolved 2 with defense 1 on 3 wounds, but making them a little bit cheaper is good, but only 5 points. If you weren't going to take hunting pack before, you're not going to take them now. So if you couldn't make them work, don't worry about it. I do think they're worth potentially trying to make work. I think especially if your meta is very fast, they're a great unit. If we take a look at them, light move 8 with Vanguard, all of that, you can rush up really quick. And that means I can get in the way of opponents or engage their models. Not necessarily that I'll win those combats, but that I will slow them down or not let you get the multiple moves because now you're engaged, you're going to have to fight me. Or I'm a few inches in front of you, you're going to have to charge me and then fight me, which is probably actually the better play. For other changes, Apex Predator got a little better. I believe Apex Predator is faster by 1. Yep. And went to 15 wounds instead of 14 wounds. So gained an extra wound. It needs it. Apex Predators don't feel good. I really like the Apex Predator. I love T-Rex and T-Rex style models. And I just feel it underperforms, at least for most people. Matriarch healing it up, maybe not so much. But everywhere else, I find it underperforms a good bit. So adding the extra wound is nice. Adding the extra move is quite good. I do like that. Drum Beasts and Tauntaurs swapped points. So they used to be exactly reverse points, and they lowered their tramples by 2. So they trample less. Good. Tramples. Ugh. Tramples rough. But they swapped their points, so I guess they thought what people were taking for the points, switch it around. Also, Drum Beast got Drum Beat. Well, we'll see Drum Beat in a second. It's the same rule. It's a rule they had before, but it actually wasn't on it. It was a rule they had, but for some reason it just wasn't there. For Drum Beat, we can get to that right here. It just means you can add one chant marker that already matches any cult chant marker in the sequence. So that's a straw event. Boom, get the push chant down. And that is it for Wadrun changes. So when we take a look at what they changed for these guys, one, I do like what they did for veterans. I do think that that's enough change that maybe you'll start seeing more veterans. Again, maybe in your meta you see them, but for at least me, I never saw veterans much. Or like I said, at least if I saw them, I didn't know what they were because they didn't do you any good. But 20 points cheaper, auto banner, 10 points cheaper for additional stands. Now you can get to the 4 or 5 stands. You can put them with, your chieftain, whoever else that you want. You can't move. I think chieftain takes them. I'm not as well versed in some of the other factions of who's a mainstay and who's the other thing. Yeah, your chieftains can take them. And keep in mind that, it takes them as mainstay for that chieftain. Had to check. I'm not always well versed in who takes a mainstay and who takes a restricted for some of these other characters that get a little bit more specialized. So it's a little bit tougher. And keep in mind that he gives them flurry. So your chieftain wants to take veterans. Veterans got better. I absolutely think if you're running a chieftain, especially if you're running chieftain on foot, shock assault, getting shock, getting flurry means that veterans are going to do tons of work for you. That does mean anything else he decides to take will do as well. So if you're taking Braves, Blooded, those are some of the main things that I would see with him. I think it's also monsters. So you would get the same thing on your Tontornal. Getting your shock, but I love it for veterans. I think the other characters they didn't really do much with. I think they're fine. I think they lost a little bit of flavor for some of the things you could do, but I still do think the characters are pretty good. I'd like to see a little bit more differentiation. Giving them the teachings of Conquest does give you ways to spend the points that you previously gained back. And since none of your units, other than one of them, actually went up in points, depending on what your list was, and it like a character did, but you were probably putting some extras on them anyway. In general, you have a little bit spare, but not much, unless you were already running a bunch of veterans, which means you could put Stoic on some units that you want, or take your Voices of Conquest if you want to be able to get that wild card in there a little bit easier. For things I absolutely see running chieftains with veterans. I think that's going to be a big thing. Any of the characters I'm seeing, probably the unit they want to probably take Stoic, because you tend to be a bit glass cannon. So anything that helps you survive out and gives you auto passes and means things like, related to fear and stuff like that doesn't affect you is big. I think that absolutely helps you quite a bit. Other than that, they really didn't do much for them. The armor is good, giving tenacious to your whole regiment, said just the character for the beats of death. Again, I think they actually added enough to help you with survivability a little bit. I think they made certain units much more viable, veterans in particular. I think the additional spells are going to give you other ways to play. You don't have to necessarily push quite as hard of the way I'll take the objective is by destroying you. I can cut you down so that in a way that you can't take the objective with Discordance. I can then put my unit on it, and if I'm not outnumbering you, I'm still going good. Especially if you're looking at, say, a Warbred unit, because they're probably a little bit more min at 3, rather than a Slinger unit that you're taking at 5 or 6, or a Brave unit at 5 or 6 that you're often seeing. At least near me, that's usually what we see is giant lines of those sort of models. So, all right, so those are the thoughts on this particular faction. In the comments below, let me know what you think for Wadrun. Do you like the improvements that they did? Is there anything that's missing? Is there anything else that you want to see? What sort of changes are you still waiting for when you get maybe some future updates? Do you feel that the characters need to be differentiated a little bit? Keep in mind, if you're looking to buy anything, we have a code below so you can save yourself 10%. Help us out as well. You should hopefully be seeing a few more of these coming out. I just recorded this one. I'm probably going to go take a look at my 3D printer downstairs and then come back and record another one. And we're going to keep going through that until we can get all this done. All right, on behalf of everyone here at the show then, has a good hobbying, it's a great gaming.